still write any post-it notes, and later on when we have a conversation, I'm going to have Kelsey, wherever she is, write things down. She's in the back, she'll be here to write stuff down as we begin. I'm just going to start off and say once again, so our process at this moment is we will do, actually our principal will speak for a moment, Dr. Benjamin, and then we will do historical resources and the SMS projects, plans with our architects, a little discussion on CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, and then we'll do comments, questions, and discussion. So that's sort of where we're going. Okay. Dr. Benjamin, would you please?
Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for coming. So exciting to have people back on campus and walking around and seeing everything. So very excited. So Mr. Upton will kind of go through the presentation in a bit, but just a few highlights to kind of share what staff are excited about. So in the Phase 1 project, it's a new building that would go sort of plopped right in front of the school where the current parking lot is. And the goal would be to replace the current bungalows that you saw that are very old and falling apart and were always meant to be temporary and are very small. So you got a sense of our historical building rooms that are much bigger. Well, the new classrooms in the new building would be about 1,200 square feet and have an outdoor space. So we're really excited about that, to get kids out of these old bungalows and into new large buildings or new large classrooms that really facilitate the type of teaching and learning that we have now, with lots of cooperation and collaboration and groups and different projects. So we're very excited about that. And something in the new building that we're really excited about is the designated drive-through drop-off pickup. So right now, if you're not a McKinley parent, what we do is there's the parking lot, cars park, and then in the morning and after school, parents in their cars drive through the actual lot where all the cars are, as cars are trying to park, drive up, kids hop out, run to school. Pickup is a nightmare, cars are parked, some are trying to leave and drive around others. So it's very unsafe. There's fairly frequent car accidents. So with this new building, there'd actually be a designated safe drive-through, which will be great because there's sort of limited parking in the neighborhood, so parents can get quickly to work or back home and kids can safely come to school. And then the new parking would be in the Phase 1 up in the front where the handball carts are. And it's a very hard area to supervise. It's very, very far in the corner. So that would be a great spot for the new parking in Phase 1. And then when the bungalows go away, that would be additional play area. And I'm sure you saw we have very expansive outdoor space. We're so lucky here. And then with the new building, it would also include more outdoor space. There'd be another courtyard. The upstairs would have a little outdoor learning area. And we really utilize our current courtyard that you saw. That's a piece of the historical building. We do use that outdoor space a lot. We have reading buddies happening there. STEM likes to be outside there and explore in the grass and whatnot. We have popsicles after jogging-thon out there. So having outdoor space actually connected to a new building would be so great for students' learning experience. Other highlights, let's see, safety. Oh, we're excited that it would have a safer entrance to the school. So right now the way it works is an intruder could just sort of come right in and just enter the campus. Whereas this new one would create just a little bit more security with actual sort of doors that sort of lock that we can let people in, but that still has a very welcoming entrance that actually gives space for people to enter versus sort of smashed through the front office. So it has that nice design in addition to a very large health office space that is new, which we certainly learned in the pandemic is very important. So it's going to have that space. It actually has a parent volunteer area, which really is something we need because currently they're in the basement, so that's the parent room. So we'd like to show that they are parents as partners in their child's learning. So we'll have that. And then the new sort of office could become a nice staff lounge. The old offices could become rooms for our counselor, for things like IEPs to happen. So it just adds more offices and sort of collaborative spaces, which we're excited about. What other things am I forgetting? I think that sums it up. We're just very excited about the opportunity to keep the historical aspect and just add new exciting pieces to the campus that really are just going to benefit our students' future. So,
Great.
thanks for coming.
Thank you. So some of this you've already seen is that, we did initially in the BB project an entry and the main office reconfiguration with some security upgrades. We feel like there's more. This was actually Saturday pre-Sandy Hook, so we keep learning what we need to do. We have done the window pane floor, door project, HVAC, fire alarm, accessibility, 21st century furniture. We have added cameras. We're right now about to add bell clocks and PA systems, which is really great for safety, so we can communicate if anything is going on campus. That's coming, and that's all going to happen. But next, Alexandra is going to come and talk to you about the historic resources reports. This one is.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alexandra Madsen. I'm a senior architectural historian at Historic Resources Group, and we completed the historic resources inventory for 4 schools in Santa Monica's district, including one for McKinley Elementary. So, as an introduction, I'm going to go really briefly through the process and methodology, how we did research, how we found what we found. Also go through a really brief development history and a construction chronology of McKinley specifically. We'll get into the eligibility and period of significance for this school, and then ultimately tell you about our findings, the potential historic district, and next steps. So the process and methodology that we used for the campus for finding out essentially the history of the campus involves primary and secondary sources. So we look at historic maps, photographs, aerial photographs, as well as newspapers. We use existing repositories, such as those provided by the Santa Monica Conservancy and the library. And we also do field inspections, so we go to all of the sites and take a look at what the integrity condition is for each school. Ultimately, then, we review existing conditions and complete an integrity analysis to see what the campus looks like now versus what it looked like at the time of its construction. We also developed historical context, so that's essentially so that we could couch the history of specific schools within the greater history of the Santa Monica as a city, the Santa Monica School District, and also schools in the United States during that time. So we went through the history of Santa Monica, as well as the history of Santa Monica School District, which included various periods of development, such as early school development, then the unification and expansion, really pushed by the progressive education movement, innovation and reform, which was brought about by the Long Beach earthquake, and post-war modernism, really with that huge population boom that we see in the post-war years. We then go through the development of each individual school, in this case McKinley, including its architectural styles, notable architects that may be involved, as well as design professionals. So the first McKinley school was actually opened in 1905, but after it became very immediately apparent in the 1920s that the school needed to expand their education facilities, they opened this site in 1923. It was designed, both buildings and building C, by really notable and prolific architects Allison and Allison, who really specialized in period revival styles. This building was designed in the Italian Renaissance revival style. In 1933, the Long Beach earthquake happened, which really severely damaged a ton of schools in Santa Monica, but also in Los Angeles County. And this was one of the very few schools that could actually be rehabilitated. So a lot of schools during that period were actually just demolished. That's the case for a number of schools in Santa Monica, including John Adams. This school was rehabilitated by another pair of really notable architects, also with a fun repeating name, Parkinson and Parkinson. They were funded by the New Deal era program, WPA, Works Progress Administration. And it was completed in 1936. 1937, the Storybook Lands statue was installed. Subsequent buildings that were completed were Joe M. Estep, designed Building A, and then in 1973, Building D was completed. So 1920s Santa Monica expansion. Santa Monica population was anticipated to double within the 20s, and it was actually the first in spending on education throughout all of Southern California. They built over 5 new schools, and 2-story masonry buildings were really popular during this time. Allison and Allison were really known for their period revival styles, and we can see a lot of this in McKinley School with a lot of the architectural details. They were really award-winning designers, and they specialized in masonry constructions. A lot of their schools did not survive the earthquake. Prior to the earthquake, most schools were of masonry construction. This is a really great photograph that I love pointing out. During the earthquake, they actually held classes in temporary tents right in front of McKinley. So this is of the campus right after 1933. California then passed the Field Act, which required certain standards for construction, specifically for seismic stability. WPA development, Parkinson and Parkinson. Santa Monica School District received over $1.5 million towards their rehabilitation through the WPA. This included stabilization of the building. We have original blueprints from that period. So ultimately we found the campus eligible under events, national, California, and local for A11 with a period of significance from 1923, the time of construction, to 1937, which was the period of WPA redevelopment. We also found it eligible under criteria C, 3, and 4, and 5 at the national, state, and local levels for architecture and design. This is for its early Italian Renaissance revival style, as well as its design by notable architects Allison and Allison, and rehabilitation by Parkinson and Parkinson. Contributing features to the potential historic district include Building B, Building C, the Santa Monica Quad. So that's actually the original historic entrance to the school. And in the 1970s and 1990s, there were quite a few alterations that switched that entrance to the side. The main courtyard, which is between buildings B and C, and then also additional features are storybook land sculpture and the WPA bronze plaque, which is on the front of building C. So here is an overview of the historic district. It's a little warped in this, but get the idea of it. And here are some photographs which you have just seen in person, so they're not as helpful. Essentially, next steps will involve incorporating reuse and rehabilitation for the contributing historic district features, future planning. It will also incorporate the Secretary of the Interior standards when looking at these historic resources. So with that, I will hand it over to Jim.
Hi, my name is Jim. I'll be describing to you a little bit about the campus master plan phases 1 and 2 that are for consideration to the Board of Education. Phase 2 is not currently funded, it's only a plan right now that they hope to fund later. And then I'll be talking about the project that is funded under SMS bond measure. But as I do so, I did want to highlight for everyone that as your surrogate in this process, there are any number of factors that we have to bring in alignment when we're thinking about these projects and the campus as a whole. First and foremost, it's not us that's driving this, it's your education master plan that was developed at the district level with your educators on what the facilities need to be in order to fulfill the goals of this district in preparing students for the 21st century. It's super important that everyone understand that it's not coming from the architect or even from Carrie and his team. It's really coming from the educators. And we are not predisposed as architects to, we're just not predisposed to drop a hand grenade in our lap. It's just not the kind of architects we are. We're not going to land a spaceship on our campus. This is a very beautiful building and it's a beautiful campus, and whatever we add to it, we're going to make sure it harmonizes in a way that is real and authentic and doesn't replicated in any kind of disrespectful way. We're quite aware that campus outdoor space is not only important for the school, but also for the community as a whole. But it's not just quantity, it's also quality. The principal mentioned the great distance there are some portions of that playground from the main campus of the school. So we're, in our effort, wanting to integrate both structured and unstructured play more into the life of the student during the school week, making sure that it's available and plentiful for community use after hours and on the weekends. And whether we'd like it or not, we still have to accommodate vehicles. I wish everyone lived within walking distance, including faculty and staff. It's just not a reality. It's not going to happen. And we can't really justify spending taxpayer dollars on underground parking or structured parking. So basically 3/4 of an acre of this site is going to be devoted to surface parking one way or another. And it's our obligation is to locate it properly for you so that it has no deleterious effects on either the school campus or the neighborhood in which it situates. And sustainable land use, finally, we as a society really need to embrace that. We may be proud of our solar panels and drought-tolerant vegetation, but it's our land use habits that are really creating injurious impacts on our environment. So we have to develop more compactly as we think about these problems. And we are also interested in the neighborhood in which this school situates. It's not just floating in space. It has a relationship with the community that it serves, particularly on Chelsea and on Arizona. And we have to be careful that whatever we build has as little impact as possible on school operations. Believe it or not, that does affect actually where you place buildings, certainly in the first phase of construction. And finally, we have to deliver excellence. Not extravagance, but excellence on behalf of the taxpayers. And we can't waste their money by building stuff that has to come down 10 years later. That's why we go through the exercise of thinking long term in order to then work backwards to understand what we do first. So I'll describe to you a little bit about what phases 1 and 2 are intended to be. This is a depiction of the campus as it is currently with Santa Monica Boulevard on the right, Chelsea on the top of the image. The big front lawn here used to be, as was mentioned, the front of school, when people wore top hats and corsets and came in Model Ts and ponies and whatnot. In blue is the historic district. In purple are all the modulars and portable classrooms, 9 along the alley, 2 at the northeast corner of the main building, and then the modular pre-K building and the modular cafeteria building in the purple squares. So you can see in the 100-year history and a lot of insult imposed upon this building with the accumulation of chain link fences and portable classroom structures and modular structures, all of which have severely compromised the relationships of Santa Monica Boulevard frontage, not to mention Chelsea and Arizona. That is something we'd like to correct over the long term. So phase 1 is to place a new classroom building on the Chelsea frontage, which is the current front of school. Not operating very well, as the principal had mentioned. We're wanting to improve that relationship to the front of school. It will include the pickup and drop-off lane along Chelsea Avenue that is now separated from staff, so it's a much safer condition, from which you'll be able to ride directly into the school, at which point we'll be able to remove certainly 9 portables, possibly even 11. I think the principal is working on consolidating. In which case, parking will then situate in Arizona and Chelsea, and we'll expand playground area towards the alley. Get rid of the portables there where Cloverfield intersects Santa Monica Boulevard. Phase 2, which is currently not funded, but which we have to anticipate. We want to make sure that what we do now facilitates what we would do in a phase 2. We would build a new early education building up there at the corner of Chelsea and Arizona, which will have 4 kindergarten classrooms and 3 TK classrooms, and on top of that, the second floor would be upper elementary school classrooms. A rationale for which I'll explain shortly. And then the 2 other projects are actually within the historic district or adjacent to it, which would be improvements to the central courtyard, relocating the learning garden, and expanding outdoor lunch facilities adjacent to the NPR. So those two projects are, for example, the one on the bottom here. On the left is the image that perhaps you've seen where we're correcting some of the issues. This building was built in 1927, so the exiting codes were different. At some point, they had to add a stair and an elevator to this side of the building, so we're wanting to correct the architecture of that so it's more sympathetically arranged in terms of its relationship to the existing building. And we'll be developing a loggia around two sides of the existing MPR, which you see in the image there. On two sides of the MPR is outdoor covered seating. In green is the learning garden. On the upper right is the stair tower and elevator tower itself. So cafeteria to the right, the courtyard to the left, the new stair tower and elevator connecting to the second floor of the south wing of the main building. The second improvement to the main building will be ameliorating some of the issues with the courtyard. Right now, it's actually really kind of odd that none of the buildings faces out onto that courtyard. So it's kind of basically turning their back to that courtyard. Whereas the historical condition would be you would encircle that courtyard with a loggia so that you actually bring life to the perimeter of the space. And so what this is proposing is that we'll put a single-story loggia U-shaped around the south, east, and west sides of the courtyard with a two-story outdoor classroom structure attached to the south side of the new wing, which will allow us then to expand covered outdoor classroom space off of the south side of the north wing of the building, which you see in plan here. So the ground floor on the left, the 4 classrooms that are currently there will have adjacent outdoor space covered and facing out into the courtyard. And on the second floor on the right, same thing, outdoor classroom space off of those classrooms facing out over the single-story loggia down into the courtyard. So with the exception of the additions to the central courtyard, all additions on the campus reside outside of the historic, proposed historic district of the campus. So I'll just repeat that sequence in 3D. Here we're looking, hovering over the campus, Santa Monica Boulevard in the lower left, Arizona is in the upper right, Chelsea in the lower right. With the new building, they will situate more or less in the parking lot, set back about 25 feet from Chelsea. We will then move the parking lot up to Arizona at Chelsea. And that will allow us to remove the classrooms along the alley along the west side of the campus, and this will be the situation of the campus until the next project comes along. Phase 2 is to expand that classroom building up to Arizona, extending the pickup and drop-off lane. We'll then be, with the new preschool, be able to remove the modular at the corner of Santa Monica and Chelsea, thus actually kind of revealing the main building to the corner, that prominent corner of Chelsea in Arizona. And then the other projects shown in orange are the improvements to the courtyard, the lunch shelter, the learning garden relocation. And parking lot gets moved where you would logically find it, off the alley. So it's not on a neighborhood street anymore, it's actually at the back of the lot adjacent to the alley where it can be served by the alley. And the field itself will be moved into a more central location. Same size, it just moves a little bit east. See the condition of the campus at the conclusion of phase 2. So this part gets a little bit dense, so actually just bear with me because it's really important to understand what factored into this strategy. And it has to do actually with the education specifications themselves, which is just a fancy word for room sizes and dimensions. In other words, they come up with their educators, they try to understand how they want to teach, which is different from how they taught in 1927. And they come up with the sizes of rooms that they need and the equipment that needs to be in the room and all of that in order to understand that. So they have done that in 2019 for every single room envisioned for the campus going forward. General purpose classrooms, special classrooms, auditorium, multi-purpose room, music, art, makerspace, all of it. So by way of example, general purpose classrooms each has a function and a size attached to it. And every single room is required to have adjacent outdoor classroom space. That's a requirement of the vision of the master plan going forward into the 21st century. And they expand, with the exception of pre-K and kindergarten. First and second grade expands considerably from what is average about 80 to 900 square feet to 1,200 for first and second grade and 1,400 for third through fifth grade. So for example, we just go to the second floor of this building, rooms designed for a completely different model of education. Students seen as receptacles of information that they regurgitate through tests. You sit there quietly while lectured at all day long. That is not the model the district wants to adopt going forward. So if you compare those rooms, which are currently at 880, to what upper elementary has to be at 1,400, you can see that we almost have to double the size of the classrooms and add outdoor classroom space adjacent to it if we want to adopt the requirements or the guidelines of the education master plan. You can decide we don't, but if we do, this is what we have to do, to somehow get those classrooms bigger. In order to do so, we're working with an incredibly well-built building that is pretty much immovable. So we have to abide by the dimensions that were given, which are 23 feet in width. So in order to achieve that class size, we have to build basically very long classrooms. And we'd go from 8 classrooms on the second floor to 4 classrooms on the second floor, thus having lost 4 classrooms in doing so. Parenthetically, while we're at it, this is the issue of the exiting at the second floor. So you see in the lower right outside here is that caged stair. And up in front of the front office is that other caged stair. Those were installed at some point to bring the building into compliance with building codes that obviously weren't in place in the 1920s. And then an elevator was built next to the east stair there. This was the original plan of the original building on campus. It's a little bit better than it was now. There's still no circulation around the courtyard, but there was circulation that connected all of the classrooms on the ground floor. You didn't have to walk through a classroom or outside to get to another classroom. There were corridors on all sides of the main corridor. And in fact, that front of school where that arrow was pointed, that Alexandra pointed at, is now an electrical closet. It's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars to move that electrical closet. We should do it. But at some point, 30 years ago, somebody had a wise idea. We're going to put our electrical closet where the lobby of the school used to be. Now they're doing better actually on the ground floor. The classrooms are about 1150, where our goal was about 1270 for first grade and 1350 for kindergarten. But the way they did it was they took over the circulation. So the classrooms are now sitting on top of the corridor spaces of the ground floor of the building. So we have 4 of them at that size. But parenthetically, kindergarten faces out onto this lawn. That's why the chain link fence is there. So the kindergarten has its playground area, and they don't play in traffic. That's essentially why we fenced in the front lawn of the school. So if we wanted to transform those in accordance with the education master plan and restore the original integrity of the building, we would go to, again, classrooms that are roughly an aspect ratio of 2 to 5. Very long, very narrow classrooms, and we would go from 8 to 5 classrooms. So for that reason, if you read the long-term program fit document that's in the final report that was published about 1.5 years ago, we're suggesting perhaps the long-term future of this building is to not to take out the general purpose classrooms and put all school facilities such as the library at the ground floor, which logically would fit quite nicely where kindergarten is now, tutoring, mentoring, special education, all the kinds of facilities, science, art, makerspace, where all the students come to participate in those activities, and move the general purpose classrooms out of this building, because the dimensions work better. So you might have library, special ed at the ground floor, you might then have science, art, and makerspace at the second floor. Either way, if you choose to transform this building into classrooms of the size that the ed plan requires, you're going to be losing classrooms. You'd be losing 7 under that scenario, you'd be losing all of them under that scenario. That's the thinking behind having to build new classroom buildings out on the campus outside of the main building. And why we chose that specific location, we can certainly discuss. So this is just the floor area shown in orange that is contained in those two buildings, phases 1 and 2. It has been suggested that the building conceals too much of the main building, but just as evidence that we have thought this through, you can go through and understand how you might build buildings. So we could build the same amount of square footage at the corner of Chelsea and Arizona, thus blocking completely the view of the main building from Chelsea and Arizona, and creating remote classroom buildings that are really too far from the main campus. An elementary school campus is not a college campus. The kids could have to be in proximity to one another. Or we could do so along Arizona, completely cutting off playgrounds from Arizona. We could do the corner of the alley and Arizona, again, too remote, too far from the heart of the campus, and also fairly unsafe in terms of its distance. So it would have the same problems that the playground area does at the corner of Chelsea and Arizona. Or we could take out the NPR and put it along the alley. A little bit odd that you would put classroom buildings along the alley and the parking lot along the neighborhood street. So we don't believe there's a serious option in terms of the placement of those buildings in any of those scenarios I just showed.
Do those two buildings need to be adjacent?
Yes, they do need to be adjacent. Yeah, it's not a college campus. They have to be able to walk to every area of the building undercover. It's also been suggested that we might try 3-story buildings. So we could try a 3-story building, the same amount of square footage in one 3-story building on any of those frontages. But again, none of those really works because they're just too remote from the main portion, main building of the campus itself. And you're having students walk across the playground area without covered circulation. Of those, this is probably the most reasonable, but again, a little bit odd that you would place a building along the alley and the parking along the neighborhood street. So we're fairly confident to the extent that we have whatever our imagination allows us, our intelligence, our understanding of the situation, that we've landed on what we believe is the best solution to accommodate the requirements of the Education Master Plan. We're absolutely willing to listen to anybody who has a better idea or disagreements. We can certainly discuss that with however much time you'd like to focus on the issue. I'll be finished in 5 minutes, promise. So just briefly then describe in a little bit more detail the Phase 1 building, which is again the 8 classrooms plus a new front office plus pick up and drop off separated from parking lot at the corner of Chelsea and Arizona. What you're looking at on the left side of the image is the end of the new building. Here, it's a stair hall, I should say. And so we are literally adopting the language at the ends of the 2 north and south wings of the main building, and then breaking down the tile roofs, breaking down the massing of the building as it approaches Chelsea, seen from the east side. Seen from the west side, now the playgrounds are in the foreground. The main north wing of the main building to the right, you see that we've separated the building as much as possible from the main building itself. We're not connecting with solid surfaces to the main building, so you can distinguish the 2 eras of the buildings, the new building and the main building. This is a floor plan of the 2nd floor that shows in orange the 4 new classrooms at pretty close to 1,400 square feet, within green the outdoor classrooms outside of it, and you see the 2 yellow arrows where the bridges of the 2nd floor connect to the corridors at the 2nd floor, the north and south wings of the main building, thus removing the 1 cage stair where the new stair will take the place of in that building I was just pointing out. This stair here is what I was pointing out in the aerial view. It takes the place of the caged stair that's currently occupying this area. This is about a 40-foot separation from what is the existing east loggia to the face of the new building. And at the ground floor, 4 lower elementary classrooms shown in orange, with the outdoor classroom space shown in green. The existing East Loggia shown in yellow, and the existing front office shown in red. So we're just taking the front office and moving it up closer to Chelsea. You can take a closer look. We've worked very closely with the principal on the configuration of this front office to make sure that it's safe, secure, welcoming, and warm. So in purple is an actual lobby. You could actually situate yourself and sit. In red is the front office itself with the workstations, and in yellow is circulation. So you can't get into the school without passing by a reception desk around the side and back into that garden that situates between the new building and the existing building. On the left will be the health center. Below that is the parent center, and across the hall is the not control access to campus, but the principal's office and the assistant principal office. This is a very early, crude view of what it's like to open the front door of the school. There would be a reception desk. To the left, you can see through to the principal's conference room. On the right is the health office. Straight ahead, actually, you can see the East Loggia there. The arches there are the current front of school. So we're going to take away the wrought iron fences and the walls that were built in front of it to actually reveal it to view. This is a view now from Chelsea. See that stair hall on the left, front office at the corner there, facing out to Chelsea and Santa Monica. Outdoor classrooms behind that grill at the ground floor. Here, at the ground floor, and at the second floor up on this terrace here. This is a view now looking north-west. Again, the grill that separates the outdoor classrooms at the ground floor from front. This is a 10-foot deep loggia along here with a bench along it that provides the staging area for children at the beginning and the end of each day. This is a view from the playground area now looking at the north bridge connecting to the north wing. Again, we've set off the building. There's just these filigreed connections to the ends of the building to make sure that there's no confusion between the areas of the building. This is the new garden that is created, taking away the wrought iron fences from the face of the loggia. On the right, to the left, in the background there is the front office from which you enter into this garden space. Now we're looking north at the North Bridge. To the right is the front office here, and beyond are entrances into the elementary school classrooms. And when you get in, there's 2 pairs that can be joined as one. So you can go from 30 to 60 students. Each classroom is about 1,200 square feet. Each classroom has vertically retracting glass doors that open out into the outdoor classroom space. And what you're looking at there is that grill, which, by the way, is an Italianate detail. It was actually invented by the Romans and adopted in the Italian Renaissance. It's been around for about 2,500 years or so. And this is a view now into the outdoor classroom, looking back into the classrooms. Ground floor, second floor outdoor classroom now at that terrace level. Again, with vertically retracting glass doors opening out from each classroom onto that space. And finally, what the building really is all about, which is the classrooms themselves, these being the upper elementary classrooms, opening up to that terrace. Sorry for a long presentation, but thanks for listening.
All right, thank you, Jim, and then the last bit, Julian Capita, who is our entitlements consultant, is going to talk about the California Environmental Quality Act.
Thank you, Terry. Jim, that was a great presentation. Thank you. So my name is Julian Capita, and I'm helping the district prepare the SEQA documents for this and the rest of the SMS projects. At this stage, we're still working on gathering data and getting all the information we need to prepare the document. We are going to work with HRG and do an evaluation of the proposed project and see if that would have any impact on the historic resources. So right now we've just identified the historic resources. We have not made a determination yet as to whether this project would have an impact on those resources or not. We're also going to give our secret consultants enough information so that they can do a construction, air quality, and noise analysis to ensure that the construction that's going on wouldn't be harmful to the students here as well as the residential uses surrounding the campus. Other things would be like this environmental site assessment as well as looking at, so there would be no release of hazardous materials during the construction, and other things that we would definitely look at would be aesthetics. Would the new building create any aesthetic issues with the project, with the campus site, sorry. The next steps, right now we are, like I said, we're doing this technical data. We anticipate, we are going to prepare an EIR, an environmental impact report for this project. The next step would be to produce the initial study, which will lay out the issues that the district believes it needs to take a closer look at. That will come out sometime in early summer, and also during the 30-day review period, there will be a public meeting, probably in this room, where we'll discuss the findings of the initial study and give probably a little bit more of an overview of the project as well at that time. After that, sometime we're thinking, November or December, we'll release the environmental impact study that will go out for a 45-day public review period where the district will receive written comments as well as host another public meeting, and we'll record the comments given at that meeting. And then the final step after that will be to prepare the final EIR, where we'll take all of the comments submitted by public, by the members of the public, as well as any public agencies such as City Fire or something like that. And we'll prepare that final EIR. We'll send any of the comments back to the public agencies within 10 days so that they can make sure that we've addressed their concerns. And then we'll go to the school board and ask them to adopt the EIR, adopt the mitigation monitoring report, any findings, and then approve the project. So that's the CEQA process.
All right, thank you. Back to the beginning. All right, so now it's time for your comments, and thank you for hanging with us. I'm going to the beginning. It'll be a little while. Yes, sir. Oh, and also, Kelsey's going to come up and write down your comments as we go along, and we will be ready. Yes, sir.
So I have two general comments/concerns. Number one, the entrance into the parking from the alley. I mean, are you going to direct your teachers to exit out towards Arizona? Because coming out this alley this way straight on to Santa Monica Boulevard with that light right there, I just envision that being a nightmare and lots of accidents.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where we are in the planning of that. I know that we will have a very, very detailed traffic study and determine that. So, I don't know if you
Yes, that is an excellent point. We would probably come in on the alley on Arizona and immediately come into the parking lot and then right back out again.
Yeah, so
And
you
then
don't
north end.
discourage people from taking
Absolutely,
that.
yeah. And that's easy enough, for them to implement as a policy operation.
Yeah.
And then the other,
That'd be staff and faculty parking, which are, I don't want to say this, a little easier to control than the public.
well, yes, totally. So then the other is like expanding the classroom size from 880 square feet to 1,400 square feet. That sounds like, I was kind of trying to pick it out, but that's not a state mandate. This is something that the district came up with on their own. The district decided that they were going to expand all the classrooms.
Yes, the state mandate, the state mandate is, or the state recommendation for classroom sizes is 960 square feet. That's what it's been for decades upon decades upon decades. That probably was not ever developed by an educator, but by the fire marshal. Because that's what you can do and have one door. And so it never was based on an educational idea of what was good for classrooms. So what we did with our education specifications, which were developed with our educators, was we asked the question, what do you need to teach in the 21st century? You know, what's special, what's different? You know, and how is that different than you know, why would you need a bigger classroom? And what we got back just repeatedly is they just needed more space to do the type of learning and how the learning has shifted. I can say that, but what I see is you're nodding your head. Would you want to answer that question, or Dr. Benjamin, would you want to talk about why a classroom would be better? A bigger classroom is necessary? I'm calling on you, but unless Dr. Benjamin wants to answer this.
I love my classroom.
Yeah, I can also put this in the spot. You guys can both mentally prepare. So yes, we absolutely need a bigger classroom. To give you a sense, our school site focus is academic discourse. So we are all about students listening and speaking to each other. So to give you a basic example, the upstairs room that was part of the tour, where we have 30 students in that space that are fourth graders, the teacher had to shove all the furniture as far away from the front as she can, just so the students can sit in a circle for the morning meeting, which is a key part of the academic discourse and structure of the day for community building. So having space to even sit in a circle is important in classroom. Then to give you another sense, I was in a third grade room today, one of the bungalows, and they were trying to do what's called a jigsaw protocol, where students are working in groups to become experts on a subject and then come together and share how they learn from each other. They could barely sit in their little groups of 4 in different parts of the room because it was so small. Another example is for project-based learning. So to give you a sense, the TK room is doing I'll give you one they just did. They were doing a cooking project and investigating the science behind cooking. Having space to actually have centers with different areas for the cooking where then parents actually came and visited and explored and got to be the customers. The students had little like money that they were exchanging. So like that whole process, having space to actually do that is crucial. Fully answer that question?
I think so. Yeah.
Do we ask the teachers?
Gives that flavor of it's not an arbitrary. It's very, very specific. Yes. Another question. It's all here, if you don't mind.
Just to follow up with that, then what is the plan for the existing classrooms that aren't? I mean,
So that was the idea that in the existing classrooms, we're probably going to blow out some walls and expand them. They'll become more rectangular, but at least it will give more space. And then adding that outdoor courtyard space and making the outdoor courtyards more functional and useful both in the middle and also out front here on Santa Monica Boulevard will provide more space.
that's phase 2.
Yeah, it has phase 2.
So phase 1, there would be 8 large classrooms in the new building.
Which will
The rest of
replace our portables.
the- Right, and the rest of the classrooms would remain the same.
As for now.
Got it.
Yeah, we have to work our way through the process. Yeah. Yes, we can.
My question was about the second classroom building. So the first one, I understand, will replace portables. And what is either demographic projections or the utilization of those spaces for second building? What's the rationale for that?
One of them is to move and create a better TKK area. So transitional kindergarten and kindergarten. So most of y'all might not know, but we right now, if a kid's born between August 1st and December 1st, you can, you turn 4 years old in that period, you can go to transitional kindergarten for a year. We're actually headed, and the governor has said we're all going to, by 2025, any 4-year-old will be in transitional kindergarten. So that will be offered, we're basically adding a whole other grade to our schools. So we need a little more space there, but also if we're going to take some of these smaller classrooms like the second floor and blow out a wall and expand those, we need more classrooms for that. So it's a little bit of an expansion. We are seeing a little bit of a decline in enrollment here, a little, not as much here as like we're seeing in Franklin and Roosevelt, but a little bit here over the last couple of years. We think some of that is COVID related, which might come back. We also are watching very closely what the city's doing with their regional housing numbers. If they meet their 9,000 spaces that they're supposed to put in the next 10 years, we hope a lot of those are families, but if like they are, that means we're going to see, so we're, and all of our plans are always watching with we have room to expand, room to grow if we need to, or room to contract if we need to. It might be that we move through, and if our enrollment really drops off, we find we don't need that building. We find that there's another solution for that. And that's part of what we're doing is, it's thinking out of the future, but it's nothing is set, because we'll have to pay attention to the changing forces. Yeah. Yes?
Hi, Ms. Serenian, current parent, just started here.
Okay.
So I want to emphasize that to the folks in this room who do not know that. Just want to say, great job. I'm especially excited about the plan to replace the bungalows. There was thank you, Dr. B, for walking me through it earlier today. Walked in, was like, oh wait, this feels very familiar. And it was terrible when I was a child going to a classroom that small. And to hear about the new pedagogical methods that have been implemented since I was a young child is just one, I'm so impressed. And two, understand the need for more space, fully support it. Thanks. Gotta run, pick up my kid.
Okay. Thank you.
30 years later. So I'm very excited to know that the tunnels are finally going, and we're getting that two-story building that was supposed to be there. You get that. So, and then the interior, everything is awesome. I'm just really, really excited. And for those of you I'm like a McKinley dinosaur. My kids started in 1988. Now I'm a grandparent of McKinley kids. So that's a long history. So it's really exciting to me. Just one question. On the new addition on Chelsea.
Yes.
See the little plane? Is that something that's in the works to...
We are at the schematic design level, and we have design development, and this is also as part of our process, we're taking sort of thoughts of where we're going. I know that our Facility District Advisory Committee has a small subcommittee that's working on sort of the question of sort of the design, and we want to make sure, and we're working with our architect, working with our historic architect to find the right balance. We don't want to replicate the historic building, we're not going to pander to it. But we want to find something that does match it and match the neighborhood.
Those touches on the inside that especially the new gardens and all that, some of the more modern touches on the inside would be nice on the outside.
Okay, great. Yes?
I have a question. I know that the removal of the portables at Chelsea, the corner, is in phase 2. Is it possible at all to have it as part of phase 1? It would be a big difference, I think,
The preschool spaces, we'll have to take a look. One of our challenges there is, and I think it's why it's in the second building, is we also have to really provide for those transitional kindergarten and kindergartens, and that includes restrooms, which will be very difficult to add along any of the historic buildings. So I think it has to wait a little bit until we can get, so that's part of the conversation is, our biggest challenge with going with transitional kindergarten is those spaces are supposed to be 1,350 square feet, and they're supposed to all have restrooms, and they have outdoor spaces. It's like, help us, we have to figure that one out. But we're excited, because it was the way we were headed anyway, because we were trying to get to full-time preschool for all 4-year-olds, and this is just pushing us to actually the transitional kindergarten, which I have to say is very clearly designed to developmentally match the 4-year-olds, where they are, what they need to learn, what they need to experience. It's not kindergarten, and it's different than kindergarten. It's a very specific educational path, which sounds very exciting. Yes, sir.
Okay. So my question is more about the history. I heard what was said about the history, and I don't hear what is the historic value, and how much has been spent trying to figure that out, what you should or should not do. If it wasn't you could do anything, would you have done something different in your design?
Okay.
I just don't, my main statement, I do want to know what value it has. I just don't think that minor historic value should come before children's education. I don't think anything there should be sacrificed.
Brilliant, thank you. What I want to say is, in Measure ES, our goal was to take everything we had and make it better. So with the modernization, the window pane floor project, the air conditioning, it was like, we're going to be using these rooms, unless gigantic money fell from the sky and we had a good idea of where to put kids for 3 years while we didn't educate them. There was never going to be a solution that says, let's wipe out the campus and build it better, and build one that meets our education standards. That never was there. So we always have to be thinking in process. And we do feel like this, where we're going, is the right, good next steps. There might come a time where people are asking that question you're asking a little more deeply, but at this moment, we feel like we're looking at the right steps to add what we need to while maintaining what we have historically. At least on this campus. We have some other campuses that have other challenges in the same way. And we're taking a look at what those are. Yes?
I just had a question about what kind of thought is being put into whichever class is going to kind of come up through the construction. I don't know what, year that is, class of 2025 or whatever. Like, are they going to sort of suffer through construction and then not, at what point will they get to be sure they get to experience some improvement? I'm sure it's been thought about, but I'm curious how it's being addressed. Like, I can think of experiences of people I know who maybe lived through construction and then got booted to the worst phase at the end of it, and
Right.
didn't get left without it, or sort of suffering with never getting that.
We're working with our principal on that, and she's, our tendency is to keep grades together, because there's a lot of collaboration.
Yeah.
So what will most likely happen is, we'll have an earlier childhood grade on that first floor and an upper level grade on the second floor, So people will get to float around the campus and sort of move, but I don't think we made decisions exactly who's going in which rooms yet.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine you had, but just that you're thinking of that.
Yeah.
You are.
Yeah, I know. It's that's part of it, and especially when you add, especially for impacts of construction to students and everything. Is we're doing work here, we're doing work at the middle school, we're doing work at high school. Everybody's going to get a little experience, or a lot of experience of construction, but also everyone will get the experience of new facilities. Like, we just opened the Discovery Building at Santa Monica High School. Between that and the Innovation Building, 3/5 of our academic classes are now in new construction, And so we're on our way to building Exploration Building, and so we're headed there with that. Sometime in April, we'll have a similar meeting like this to discuss the campus plan at Lincoln. And we have a lot of good ideas, but we really need input on which direction and which steps are the right steps first. That's sort of where we are with that process. Yes, sir?
Was there, I don't know the right term, but was there any function to the double roof of the new building? Or was that simply design?
Yes, there are a few reasons for that. The highest roof, maybe we can go to that file actually. Its peak resides at the same height as the main building here, so that it kind of forms a datum line, and it's intended to connect all the way across phase 2, so there's a kind of continuity there across the Chelsea. But then the upper elementary classrooms actually extend beyond, and so we're dropping that. And I'm going to discuss this more at length with FDIC next week. So that second roof is because the upper classrooms there extend beyond it a little bit. So it's just this idea that this is like this little village, Italian hill town or Spanish hill town or whatnot, the way that it's relating to the existing historic building and creating a little bit of variety in terms of how it relates to the rest of the building. What you see, while we're on this image, what you see up front is this big apron that's forming the loggia, behind that to the ground floor, the outdoor classrooms, and then the second floor outdoor classrooms beyond that. So it is going to be challenging to make it more transparent, more windows or whatnot, because we do have to attend to children's safety. They're actually sitting outside along that frontage. And that's because the circulation to get to the classroom had to be on the inside, because that's also a safer configuration. That said, we do hear that the building seems too plain or too serious or too imposing, and certainly we're at the beginning of the design, and we're going to be working on that with everyone who wants to be involved. So the short answer to your question about the roofs was really about variety, breaking up the mess.
Is that deck outdoor classroom space?
Yeah, exactly. Not the gray part, behind the...
This is outdoor classrooms.
What is the great part?
So what's the great part?
That's mostly the roof to the admin suite below. You see the glass underneath
Yeah, oh, okay.
the lobby and whatnot.
Silly question, why not use all that space for
We
classrooms?
could, yeah, we could.
Maybe the garden.
Anything. That's a doctor.
Yeah, that would be an interesting thing to.
I would agree to that note, making that usable space for students.
Because kids are gonna feel like they're gonna hop over that wall. See over there?
Right, well, that's what I'm worried about. Is, you know, the kids are...
Is that an atrium there, where you see it open?
That's the ground floor outdoor classroom space, yes. And we're lucky because the long length is facing south, so the sun is doing this, so there's pretty much enough south for it.
Yes, sir.
I like McKinley, so first of all, compliment the modernization was great, be my son. Right? So this is wonderful, and the classrooms, the upgrades were great. And innovation discovery is fabulous, it's never fun. My question is, with the rising costs and everything, we said SMS will pay for phase one. How confident do you feel about that now for the building and all the outdoor playground that you want to do? Is that still, you feel confident that is all going to be funded?
We feel pretty good about most of these projects. We picked up a year delay from where we wanted to be with SNS and to do historical resources and other things, and COVID delayed us. And so we're going to have a hard time doing all of the SNS projects that we planned. But we think we can accomplish the ones that we have here. After that, we will be talking about another bond measure at some point.
And just to clarify one detail, when we do cost estimates, we always estimate when the building will be built, and we take today's dollars and escalate, take a shot at what it will be when the building is built. So that is built into the budget.
And we're tracking some pretty substantial escalation because that's what we would see. Yeah.
When the CEQA and the EIR are approved, when do you really think you'll start breaking ground?
Our goal is that we start the construction on this next June, so June of '23. So we want to jump right in on it, and I think it's about 18 months or a little more construction. So we'll have it, probably fully ready by August of '25, maybe by, sometime in the spring of '25. But that's our goal, and we're going to jump on it. We're trying to be, don't waste time. It's costing more money every month.
It's exciting, you do it faster.
That's about as fast as we can get going. At least it fits with the school year, because there's movement, the movement of the parking lot and the initial demo and all that stuff. We got to get done in the 10 weeks of summer, so that we're ready for school to start in August. So we need to start on June 10th is going to be our day, to start. But we still have to do CEQA. We have to do the finish of the design. We have to go through. This has to all be approved by the Division of State Architects. Procurement, we have to get somebody to build it. So a couple steps between now and then. School construction is not fast. That's why we're always trying to think into the future. So we're planning where we're going. Yes, ma'am?
I don't want to get too excited, but are you saying that the drive-through portion, you would hope to actually have this going, like we could use it by that next fall, if you start in June?
I don't think we'll have the driveway by the summer, by August of '23, but we might have it by August. I don't know. We'll have to see.
I think
Like you can do things in phases, I guess, as it's going.
one possible scenario is that the very first thing done is moving the parking lot
Right.
to the corner. And then depending how, on construction staging, they could actually build a construction fence that's set back 25 feet, and you could actually use that sooner or
Maybe.
later.
We have, that's part of, give us a little more design time to figure that out. Yeah, there's a little more to figure out to make that all go together, but it's where we are. Any other questions? We're coming to the end of our time. I did not see you guys. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So with the new construction, there's quite a few trees that probably have to come down. So that's in the phase as well, like the one down
I was
the
just-
playground or not?
I was just standing out there with you, and there are 4 little scrawny trees right out in front of the parking lot.
Right.
Those are the only 4.
The ones in the inner courtyard, like where that road.
No, none of them are affected.
Yeah, and none of them on the playground.
Right.
Yeah. We're pretty careful with trees, though when we do take down trees, we usually double the number we have on campus. And we're really good at that. Some people see, as you drive by Santa Monica High School, on the corner of Pico and 4th, right where the football field is, you see trees that are growing up there. That's our branching out nursery. So actually the students are growing those trees from like saplings and acorns, so that when we're ready to put them on campus, they have taller and bigger trees. As opposed to putting, as opposed to getting a 4-foot tree then, we're putting 16-foot trees. And so that's part of our process of thinking ahead and making sure that the students are going, hey, that's my tree, I grew that tree. So that's one of the things we're involved in, to make sure that we're creating that. Last question. Yes?
Are you going to be posting this information?
Yes, this whole presentation, also the recording of this event will be posted in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And we will be having more meetings and more times before the board, lots more opportunities. Tell your friends they had a great time, that they need to come do this. This is something that, oh my goodness, you have to do it. Beyond that, I just have to say thank you. Thank you for being here. It was so great having you here, and your input we really do listen to, and it will impact and change what we're doing here. And hopefully we can make something really great for our students here at McKinley. So thank you.